In this podcast, we have conversations about personal experiences with loss, grief, and unexplained spiritual encounters.
Whether it's a dream, a visit, a vision, or a newfound life after loss, we believe life and love never dies.
This is Surviving Death and Dying
with Tricia
and Misty. Welcome. When we lose someone we love, it can be unbearable. Yet we are still here, alive, and on this planet, and we have to find a way to carry on. We don't have to do it alone, but we do need to let ourselves experience the grief while also remembering the ones we love.
Keeping those we've lost alive in our hearts can be done in so many ways. But no matter your religious beliefs, being open to signs, sensations, and visitation dreams can bring you peace and healing.
So today we're picking up where we left off from last week's conversation with Rodney Dube, one of our listeners who's excited that we started this podcast and wants to share his own story.
Yeah, and you mentioned something about Facebook. Was it your mom that came through on Facebook or anybody else come through on technology?
My mother comes through on Facebook. My father does. My father was never on Facebook, but again, people, I found this picture of your dad, or I found this picture of your mom, or occasionally pictures get, I've got a doozy for you again. Thank God you keep asking me these questions, because I start thinking of things it'd be one of these things where I would hang up and be like, wait a minute. All right. Well, sometimes, like I said, people will share pictures that I've never seen. Oh, I had this picture of your mom. We got one it was around Mother's Day again, around that time. My mother in her wedding dress, opening up the cork of champagne. Never seen that one, that kind of thing.
So wait a minute. So these are actually like someone else posts something, but the timing for you is right and speaks to you as coming from your parents. Okay.
Yep. Good thing I didn't write this one down, but good thing you guys remember. They're probably like, you need to tell this. My father, he used to work in the television commercial production industry. So that's kind of in the genes why I worked in television. His first word of advice to me was like, don't go into business. Yep. So again, we're in the process of cleaning out the house and things and stuff. And we come across, which we never knew we ever had, but it was buried in a cabinet in the garage, which was put in the garage when we moved to Florida in 1979. So it's been there for a long time. So like 40 something years. I come across reel-to-reel audio tapes. So the thing was, where I worked, one of my coworkers was, an older gentleman who was an engineer. And as a lot of when you work in TV, engineers, they all have old devices and old TV things. Anytime they would throw out old equipment, they're the guys going through the dumpster. That video deck cost $25,000. No way, we're not throwing that out. I'm taking it home. But he was into reel-to-reel audio. So he had the old tape machines. Yeah. And so I gave it to him. I said, hey, listen, do me a favor. Can you put this to an audio file that I can hear? Record all of it. I have no idea what's on it. I'm thinking it's going to be old radio commercials from when my dad was the television commercial production manager for Lever Brothers. So, AIM, Whisk, Snuggle, all that stuff. He was the guy that made sure the commercial got made for the company. And so this was in New York City. And so we get the stuff back. My friend goes, hey, here's the CD. There's some kind of talking on it. And I think they're speaking in German. I don't know. But anyway, and there's piano playing. And I was like, okay.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, all right, let's see how this goes. So we went, my brother at his house in his den. We go to put it on. It's around 10 o'clock at night. Woo, we get spooky for fun. And we go to, play this stuff. And so basically what it was a dictation program where people were trying to make money on the side doing dictatorial work. So you'd buy the kit, someone would read this speech, our company is trying its best in order to make a new product for you. And meanwhile, the person's got to try and type this as fast as they can. My mother was trying to, I guess, develop some secretarial skills for some extra money or something. But in order for her to practice, he borrowed a reel-to-reel audio deck. What you could do, we're all from the generation from cassettes and records and things. as you probably remember, when you would hit, play and record on something, and if you had a microphone into a cassette deck, you could hear your voice coming through the speaker. That was the kind of fun of it. So what they did was they re-recorded over these things. So one night they all got drunk. My dad is playing the piano. My aunt is talking and singing into it. My mother, I hear my mother's voice. I think my brother was just born. This is like 1966, something like that. They were mentioning something to their mother, my grandmother, my German grandmother, which I didn't hear her voice, but oddly enough, I'll mention this in a moment here, but they're carrying it on and la 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 la, and I hear my mother like, "Oh, Dicka, all this stuff is boring. I want to sing and dance, and we're singing, la 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 la." They are drunk. Last word she says, "Oh, all right, we turn this off. Don't worry, no one will ever hear this." This is on the recording. And when we were looking at, playing this stuff, my brother is, he's at the computer. I'm at a, lounge chair. And I've had this happen, not all the time, but I saw a flash, a white orb, like a shooting star inside the room. And it went from across the room into his computer monitor and dissipated and went away.
That's the spirit going to the computer. So they're trying to tell you there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that was one of the ones I'm like, and I've had that happen a couple of times where it's like a shooting star inside the house. It's like, and you're like,
That's
what
cool.
was that? And I'm looking around like, again, I'm looking for,
Right.
the explanation. Oh, there's a car going by.
There are a lot of hospice workers and others, or in the stories of shared death experiences, that they talk about seeing lights and glows or mists and fogs.
Yeah.
A couple of days after my mother passed, I was half asleep, but I looked on the side of the wall and I saw two kind of orb things together dripping down like it was paint.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I thought, that's probably them together or something like that. Also, my brother found a smudge on one of his iPhone one day, taking a picture where my mother usually sits on her bed, and he thinks it's a bug going by, and I'm like,
no, it's mom.
Yeah.
And this is really interesting. I mean, these are the best or the most exciting thing I think we can pull out of losing someone in the grief side are what we can perceive as messages from beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these signs that we get and that we can potentially can be around us. And some people don't even notice. You're obviously very perceptive to them.
Yeah.
But let's talk about more of those messages.
What about the angel numbers too? That you were talking about, to angel numbers with the team and all that.
I have an official angel number, I call it. I see this number all the time. And I take pictures of it with my iPhone to make sure it's not just me. And I've got tons of it. And it's 622. And that's my birthday. I look over, I see a clock, 622. I look over in a box, code 6-220 622. And I kind of go, okay.
Wow.
Maybe it is what it is. And sometimes I take note of it. Sometimes I'm like, I'm always seeing 622. Usually it's a time in the break in the newscast, that kind of thing.
Right. But I was kind of raised to believe there was a number that followed me. It was my mom that made it aware to me back when telephones were operators plugging in cords. I had a great aunt that was an operator.
Wow.
Too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And phone numbers were just a couple of digits. So there was a number that followed me in my life that my parents would point out, and my aunt, and that part of the family, I think, was very instrumental in my mom and dad getting together, because there was a car accident that resulted in a death of a grandparent, my great grandparent, but it's where my mom and dad reunited and met again. And then from there, they were married. So, there's all those kinds of things sometimes we can look back at, especially once time has passed, to see how those events have led us to where we are today. And once someone identifies a number like that, Tricia, I think you've told me maybe if someone with a number.
Yeah. One of my former coworkers always would send me, she'd be like, the time would be like either a 111 or
Right.
the 222. And she has a very strong belief in that. She goes, I have angels around me right now. And then also the picture that was with it was also hearts too. So she had the hearts plus these the numbers representing the angels there. And I'd be like, she would only have like 2 or 3 certain ones that she would send me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want that to happen to me again. And then all of a sudden I started seeing those numbers for me, different ones, but I would see those numbers and I'd be like, oh, I have angels around me right now. I love that feeling. Also being of a religious background, like that I'm religious now, that even means more to me than
because that's the thing. It's like, like I said, my brother's very religious. It's a validation. And it's funny for me. It's like, well, do you have faith? I'm like, no, I don't have faith anymore. I have pure belief. I'm all in.
Right. And I'd like to point out that these experiences don't depend on your religious background, but that is how we will use or draw our vocabulary and words around to explain these experiences.
Right.
And I believe it can happen to anyone, no matter their beliefs. And I think you're absolutely right. You start out with a faith and then eventually it becomes okay, it's just pure belief because I can't deny this anymore. This is happening.
Yeah. And it's kind of funny when I even, anytime I've gone to church, I, in a way, feel a little sorry for people that are like, they haven't experienced it yet.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like, it's almost like they're praying so hard that something will happen. I'm like, hey, don't worry. It's okay.
That reminds me of a story that I don't think I've told, but I've alluded to another podcast with my dad. Rodney, you and I both come from television production world, and someone we had worked with in Orlando ended up working in the control room at the Crossing Over with John Edward show. And she said in the beginning, when they all started, they were like, I don't care what he says, as long as my check clears.
Check clears, yeah.
And I do know firsthand from knowing people on the crew that they didn't go through the line of people trying to get information. That's actually more work than just letting the man pick up on what he picks up on. That's easier,
Right.
But I got to visit the show and be in the audience one day because when I happened to arrive into New York for my visiting of friends up there, she said, this is weird, but we suddenly have room in our audience because we actually had something go wrong and we are missing audience, and that never happens. So you must need to be here.
Okay.
So I thought, okay. And I got to go. But to your point, when I got there, because I lost my dad, but it had been a while. This grandmother I mentioned about the car accident being what brought my parents together. My aunt was the one driving the car, and she was 18, and it was before seatbelts, and someone had run a stop sign. So she desperately wanted me to hear from my grandma Loney, which for the first time I was learning her name was Melonia. I didn't know that before. And then my cousin who had lost her brother, Phil, at 24, he just died watching a movie, of course, wanted me. She had not had a dream of him and wanted me to hear from Phil. So I'm going in there thinking I have this responsibility now. If I want to hear from my dad, my aunt wants to hear from Grandma Melonia, and then my cousin wants to hear from Phil. But I got there and I felt like all these people, and I had dreamt of my dad. My dad had come to me. It had been so long, I was kind of at peace with it at this point. And I didn't tell anyone I knew or anyone on the show, any of those names or anything, but I looked at all these people there and I thought, they are really hurting. They are really hurting. They need this more than me. They haven't had an experience. It's okay, Dad. These people need. And then I got this sensation in the back of my neck, and I heard my dad say, I'll be the last one.
Oh.
And I just kind of went, okay, that was weird. That was not something I had ever experienced before. So like you were saying, Rodney, I don't claim to speak to spirits.
Right.
Yeah.
Tricia, have I ever told you, no.
No, not at all.
No.
Go. I just want to interject something.
Yeah,
it's kind of
please.
It's kind of like the Mark Maron joke he used to do in stand-up. He'd sit there and be like, can you imagine if the crazy guy that's walking around mumbling to himself, talking to God, actually is? He's like, I need you to save the world. The guy's like, I can't. But you are the one. Leave me alone. I can't. And it turns out he actually is the guy. The homeless guy is the one.
That's kind of like what happened to John. Yeah. So I'll tell you, when they record this show, and from witnessing it now, for anyone who's been a fan or wondered, or even skeptics out there, the first thing I can tell you is no one came to me asking me any names. Even my friend who got me in, she only knew my dad had passed a while back. Right. That's it. But he's there with his audience, and we were kind of in a horseshoe shape for hours. Mm-hmm. And he'll pick up on someone and he tries to figure out where it's coming from. He narrows down. He's not afraid to go, nope, not you. He won't just, the first person to raise their hand. He goes with his gut. And in between those readings, he will answer questions. And someone said, how did this first happen to you? So similar to what you're saying with, the crazy people on the street, he goes, well, I felt this sensation in the back of my neck and I heard a voice. And so now I'm sitting here. I was freaking out. Yeah. So I was, first of all, I'm used to being behind the camera, not on camera. And so I was a little self-conscious of being in the audience. Right. I'm having this go on and nobody knows, so I'm now feeling funny. And hours had gone by, and he also picks up themes. He said in every show, there's always some kind of theme. So in this particular show, first of all, he said to everyone, look, he goes, they would take so long for someone to identify, like people were not quick in my experience on that show to raise their hand and claim someone he picked up on. So he goes, look, I'm not going to come up with a social security number. He's like, if you relate to this in the slightest, and he would say, I'm in this area, and he would come to a section, and he was always away from my area for the first, few hours of this. And little ways down the line, he said, the theme I'm getting from today, because I always get a theme. Today's theme is no one is telling me what the event was that caused their death, because they're saying that's not important. So I'll come back to that, because I didn't realize that was important to my aunt until much later. And so he starts working his way around the room, and now he's in my section, but I'm at one end of the section, and he says, all right, where's Melonia? He actually said Melonia.
Wow.
Oh, wow. That is amazing.
Again, my stomach was like, and all of a sudden, for the first time from the 3 hours, people are raising their hand. And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. And he's going to them, and they'd go, Molly, Melanie, Melissa. He's like, nope, it's Melonia. And I froze. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's saying Melonia. This is the one that died in the car accident that my aunt was driving. She wants me to hear from, and I couldn't raise my hand. I couldn't bring myself. And then he starts walking in a circle on one leg, and he goes, okay, she died of a stroke because I'm feeling like half of my body is paralyzed. And I'm like, nope, that's not her. It was a car accident. So I check it off. And then he steps closer, and he's like, nope, he wasn't letting anyone claim it. He's like, nope. He steps closer, and he goes, where's Phil? Who lost Phil? Oh. And I'm like,
is that your dad?
Name so that was my cousin's brother, where she had said, I want to hear from Phil. I haven't dreamt of him. I need to hear from my brother Phil. And so again, I freeze. And someone goes, Phyllis, and he's like, nope. He goes, Melonia and Phil, they're together. And I'm frozen. Wow. I'm sitting here. I'm still not raising my hand. And he's not accepting anyone else raising their hand. So then he goes right in front of my row, and I'm at the end. And he goes, who lost their dad? And the girl in front of me, before I could raise my hand, her arm goes up. And then my thought is, of course, everybody lost their dad. And he asked her, he goes, how long ago? And she said, last year or whatever. And he goes, nope, this was a long time ago. At that point, I'm like, Melonia, Phil, dad. Oh my gosh, that's me. And he goes, oops, they're gone. And that was the other point he had, was they will not let go of me until it's them. And he goes, then they'll let go. So as soon as in my own head, so I'm having this dialogue nobody else knows is going on while John Edward talking. So this was not TV worthy. But I actually knew an editor. He was editing on that show at the time. And he's like, I'll try to get you the clip. I'm like, no, don't risk your job. It's okay. But as soon as I knew and acknowledged in my head, he goes, oh, they're gone. That's it, everybody. Have a great night. And walked out.
And he was the last one.
He was the last one.
Wow.
I picture the movie Ghost, and I picture the first time that Whoopi Goldberg is like really picking up in spirits and they're all in a line.
Yeah.
And I picture my dad standing there back. Go ahead. Okay.
Yeah. You first. I mean, that's the thing too, is that like, I don't even know how John Edwards does it.
I love it.
YouTube's got a channel. It was very interesting. It's called Channeling Eric, ERIK. She was a psychologist and her son had committed suicide. They try and channel all kinds of like, famous people through him. And it's really interesting. I mean, again, it's some things of, validations here and there, but as even as a kind of like an amateur program, I find it very, very, very interesting. So Dannion Brinkley, you can Google him, find things on him. Dannion, I did meet and obviously and worked with him, when he was a guest on one of our shows. He's had some near-death experiences, which I found was very interesting. It really changed him, where when you go to meet him, he hugs you, which nowadays, yeah, he does that like instantly. He's like, nice to meet you. Please, I hug everybody. I'm like, all right, brother. Okay. His story is fascinating. Where, he got hit by lightning. He goes, I was in Vietnam. I was not a nice man at all. And I got hit by lightning and he dies. He is in front of, his judgment, basically. And part of the judgment, and I'll pepper onto something here in a second. When we pass, we go through everyone that we touch. Even right now, you and I, at some point, this will be part of our memory system. We had a conversation like this.
Our life review.
The life review. And it's more of like how you treat people.
Right.
So, and he felt all the pain of people he treated and everything else. And they said to him, you've got a mission. We want to send you back. And he's like, okay. So he gets sent back. He goes about his life. He's not doing anything that they asked him to do. And he dies again. He got hit by lightning, I think, again.
What?
So,
what?
Yeah, I think he got hit twice. So he goes back. Same thing where they're like, listen, you're not doing what we're telling you to do. You've got a mission. He's not allowed to divulge it, but he's like, you got to go do it. So he's like, well, okay. So he kind of gets better understanding. And basically he finds out in life, he's there to help with the hospice and connecting them over and all this sort of stuff. So that's what he decides to do.
Yeah. Did he get any like psychic powers with the lightning hitting him?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
No, not that I know of, but this was the other thing that happened when he died for a third time.
Wait, not by lightning.
No, he had some kind of heart attack. And he goes, I'm up there. It's the group again. It's the beings. And you know who also had that same thing of seeing the beings is Gary Busey. Gary Busey in his motorcycle accident had a near-death experience where he banged his head and he saw beings that sent him back. And probably it's his team, it's probably the team. But anyway, back to Dannion. He goes, so I'm now up there. And they're like, you've done what we asked. Come on in. He's like, no. And they're like, no. He's like, yeah, no. He goes, I like what I'm doing. I want to go back. And he's like, well, but you're supposed to, your time. And he's like, no, you got to send me back. And he said, here I am in an argument with this being. You need to send me back. I like what I'm doing. I want to continue. And they went, okay.
Did he bribe him?
No, but they sent him back.
And so were they all the same people each time the beings that he went? So, okay.
It was the same group. But another story that always hit me. This was like on some television show on near-death experiences and things like that. This woman had passed away, and she's obviously in heaven. She's about ready to make the crossover. I can't remember how she died. Something happened. She says, "I'm in this area, this thing of light, and this handsome man comes walking up to me. Very good-looking man, and he's tall and he's handsome, and he leans over to me and says, 'Mom, you gotta go back.'"
Oh.
And she's like, okay. And she didn't have children yet. And then a couple months later, she had him.
Wow.
Oh, that's neat.
So she met her son before.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Neat. And as a man.
As a grown, handsome man. I always had this sort of vision, and I don't know if anyone's ever thought of this. I've always kind of thought, they always talk about the tunnel and the light. I've never seen this. This is just a thought of mine. We go through the tunnel, we go through that, all that stuff, and then we come out to the other side. I also think there's one in reverse. I think there's a tunnel that comes into life. That tunnel is made of all light, and it's made of billions of beings, billions of souls, and it swirls. And it's every point of that is a person, a soul, a being. And there's bleachers, and they are like a football game.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of like a little river or stream or something, and they are cheering them on. Good luck.
Is it their family, do you think? Or
there's
friends?
Family, there's like, I almost could picture a couple old ladies are going, he's going to be a doctor. Oh, a good doctor too.
It's a sporting event in your view.
It is. In my mind,
cool.
It's like a sport, and they go down and boom, they're born. And then, and then on our end, of course, when people pass, it's awful. But on their end, they're like, hey,
right.
I'm back. Yeah, you're back.
There's a book that I want to reread that is Journey of Souls. And it does talk a little bit about that belief. There's been past life regressions that have uncovered stories of reincarnation. Well, a step further, and Brian Weiss is one of those. We've talked about his book, Many Lives, Many Masters. Mm-hmm. But there's a step beyond that of being able to, when you regress someone to a previous life, you can also talk them to their death and about their life in between life.
Oh, interesting.
And there are books on that are really fascinating, and something else that I don't know if Tricia knew I wanted to dive into.
No, I didn't. Well, but it's good to hear.
but again, let's there's one thing I kind of think about. Like, let's look for something I think is kind of interesting that I've noticed just in general. Like, you see a lot of men nowadays with these long beards, young guys and everything else. At a time that was all really prevalent was around the 18 somethings. And I started thinking to myself, I wonder if that's that group
coming back,
is back. And this is why they like these beards, because it was in vogue then. And now again, we're talking about race and all these sort of things. And I'm like, is this the Civil War crowd coming back? Is this what this is?
They haven't learned anything yet.
Right. Didn't you learn anything yet?
My aunt always jokes about how she just wants to get it right this life so she doesn't have to come back because she feels life's tough.
Well,
that's how we learn.
Yeah, but to that point, this is what is the meaning of life? I think, why are we here? Right. We are here for a couple reasons. One, obviously, we're here to technically love each other, as in we are all connected. But on top of that, the most important thing, we're here to learn. Right. And we're in this is basically a giant high school we're in. Right. And we have these lessons that we need to learn in order for us to grow. But on top of that, it communicates directly back to God and back down. And my thought, I'm like, it's like a circle pattern. Yeah. We come down, like the old saying, we are he, meaning he's part of us. We're all part of this thing connected. And when it comes down to say something, that's what I wanted to bring up, which was forgiveness. Oh, now I remember another thing that happened to me that shook me to the core. What had happened was I had feelings for someone, and that relationship didn't work out, and she went on to someone else. And I was in kind of deep where that thing where, let me put it this way for a little spoiler alert when it comes to men. When a guy's really, when a guy wants to get serious about, a woman or whatever, we start rearranging our lives. The playtime is over. We're like, I'm going to get a real job because I need to take care of her. We need a house. We got to get, we start thinking like we got, playtime's over. We got stuff to do. So I had this feelings for someone, it didn't work out. And I happened to see her and her new boyfriend of all things. You're like, why do I got to see this? And why do I get to see it? Whatever. And then I heard a voice, and it was not my voice, and it was in between my ears. And it was forgiveness. And
for you to forgive her.
Yeah. But
where's telling
telling you, forgive her. And what it meant was forgiveness as a partial definition to me, is not about someone kills your family and suddenly you forgive them and you're best friends and come on over for dinner. No, no, no. It doesn't mean that. Yeah. It means letting go. Let go of the anger. Let go of the bitterness. Let go of the negative chunk.
Right.
Then forgive the situation, because a lot of people will do things not knowing what they're doing.
Right.
And they have no idea. They're just doing their thing, but they hurt someone and they don't know. And that's, right. That's kind of what it is. Or they may be doing something and they really, really are selfish, or right. something like that. And so that's what forgiveness is a meaning to me about.
So how many times have you heard a voice or someone speak to you? Does that happen very often?
No, but I've heard it twice. That was the forgiveness voice, which was not my own voice.
And what was the other one?
My mother. I heard my mother. Wow. This is after she passed. She was nudging me as I was sleeping. She literally says, she's like, Rodney, I can touch you. And I could feel someone tugging on my leg as I was asleep. Wow. But she did not have her accent. No German accent.
That's interesting.
And it was, but it was her.
I heard my dad that one time.
Wow.
With John Edward.
John Edward.
Right. And I also heard a high school friend as I was driving. I was driving down I-4 and I knew his voice. I mean, it's like hearing it in your head, in your, as you imagine something, but very clearly call Ann, very desperate, wanting me to call Ann. Mm-hmm. Well, this person had passed away the year before, prior to his wedding.
Oh,
it's an unfortunate, horrible event that, I really feel for the people all around him, his fiance, his, family and everything. But I responded with, I didn't know Ann. What would I say to Ann? I can't call her. And I said, what would I say? And I heard back Bosco. And I go, what the hell?
Wow, what's Bosco?
I don't know.
Wow.
I apologize to him to this day because I never picked up a phone. I wouldn't have known how to get hold of her, but I did have something else happen down the road. When I was working on the Pet Psychic show, one of the things we did to understand what we were working on was there were a few of us that went to some workshops that are focused on, they believe anybody can develop, awareness and senses and things. And so I'd gone to this workshop and we were doing some things. And one of the exercises was they partnered us up with someone and said, just focus on the person in front of you and each take a turn to just tell them whatever it is you're picking up on. Mm-hmm. And the person I was sitting with said, I'm picking up a Kevin. Do you know a Kevin? I'm like, no, I don't know a Kevin. He's like, I'm seeing like a wedding ring. And I go, oh, we called him Krebin.
Oh, wow.
That was his last name. We called him Krebin. And he goes, he wants you to talk to somebody with the first letter A in their name. And I was like, Ann, he wants me to talk to Ann. So I had a second person who I did not know until just this workshop, right after this had happened to me, tell me this. So of course, I was a little spooked by some of the stuff that happened there. And I went a few times and then I stopped because I didn't know what to do with any of that.
Did you actually go and tell her?
Yeah, I was going to say, did you finally get...
What happened finally one day was I was on the phone. So he had a few cousins. We all went to the same high school, all close in age. But I did get to talk to someone on the phone down the road. And it had been now longer, time had passed and she and I were catching up. And I said, I have to ask you something because I had a dream and I want to know. I go, how is Ann? And she said, she's better now. She was really tough. I said, how was she, that 1 year after? And she said, she was really tough. And I said, I had a dream that Steve was worried about her. And I didn't, he wanted me to call her, but I didn't know. I didn't ever know his fiance. I didn't feel I was in a place to call anyone. I didn't know what I would have said. Like John Edward said, you don't want to be the attack medium.
Yeah, out of the blue.
Out of the blue. Hey. So
Hey!
I said, does Bosco mean anything to you? And she said, yeah, that was the name of their cat. So that's all I know. That's all I have.
Is the cat alive?
Well, to this day, probably not.
Okay.
This was a while ago.
I'm here with the cat.
No, I did. It's one of the saddest funerals I had ever attended, feeling bad for the fiance, everybody. And since we're talking about, so I'm now going to say it in case we ever offended anyone. I was standing by the casket. There were a few of us. And if there was anyone listening who was at that funeral and was offended by a few girls that started laughing by the casket, let me tell you what happened. All of a sudden, somebody was hearing snapping by their ears and they freaked out. And they're like, oh my gosh, Steve is snapping by my ears. You know, that's all she could decide was that he was there teasing her. And that made us laugh that we're like, oh yeah, that would be him. He was a jokester. He's pulling your leg. And then we realized we kind of caught ourselves in this moment of laughter around the casket and thinking, okay, we need to move ourselves now away because this is probably not being perceived very well by other people.
Yeah, sure.
You know, and to that, I would just like to say everybody's grief is different. And it is great to remember someone in that joy. But I still talk to Steve. It just in my own, I'm not saying I hear from him. I've always felt so bad and so guilty that I'd experienced that and never did anything with it.
Well, let me say this, if Anne is still alive, I would say at some point when you feel comfortable, reach out to her. It's never too late. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And don't, because in some ways I think maybe you need to do that because I could just tell Anya, there's a bit of a burden with you with this. Just say, hey, and you may find insight and there may be something that she may say that will suddenly spark as we've been having these conversations, a memory. Like in fact, in college, same situation of a fraternity brother who was a week away from being married and died in a car accident and going to that funeral as well. And my roommate, had a dream about him that, hey man, it's okay. I'm doing just fine. How's everybody doing? That kind of thing.
I'm hoping that the family has, dreamt about him or gotten good messages because it's sad.
It's sad. Yeah. Oh, it absolutely is. I have a feeling that they did, and they probably may not, really understand it. I mean, that goes for anything, but when I get them, they really kind of stick out. It's nothing of just kind of like, it sticks out, but in the moment I'm like dismissing it. Right. And then it's like hour, 2 hour, next day, it's suddenly boom, and it locks in. I'm like, oh, that's what that was.
It's a strong feeling that you'll never forget.
Oh, well, here's something for you. Things that you receive. I was doing television corporate video work, and I was working for a sole proprietor, and he's of Cuban descent, and I'm still friends with him. Everything's all good, and he's a very successful gentleman. And it was fun to kind of work for him and learn from him. He comes up to me one day, and he's Cuban, like I said, and he gives me a VHS, and he says, hey, listen, you do me a favor, you put this on DVD for me? And I said, okay. He goes, yeah, it's a travel video that aired in Cuba, and it was smuggled out. Oh, okay. And I go up to his office. I said, hey, listen, do you mind if I make a couple of copies of this? Because I'm going to a wedding in a week or so. And my friend's Cuban. I thought maybe I can give it to him and, give it to his parents, whatever. I made the DVD cover and I made all this stuff, made it really kind of nice. Found a map, these ocean maps of, Cuba. And I did this whole design. So I go to my friend's wedding, and my friend, again, who's Cuban, his father is a very proud Cuban and every right to be proud. He escaped Cuba. He went to Spain, and then from Spain, he immigrated to America and became a doctor, and then eventually down to Texas, down to Florida, and became a successful doctor and a very successful, American. And so I gave him as a gift for the parents. Yeah, I'm at his house. Of course, everyone's having drinks, whatever. And his father's on the couch. Right. So he comes up to me and he literally looks at me and he's like, how did you know? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, how did you know?
How'd you know what?
Exactly. That's what I said to him. How do you know what? How did you know this is all the places we went to?
Wow.
How did you know? I said, I didn't. I got a tape. I made a copy of it, and I thought you would like it.
Wow.
He goes, this is what, they were pointing out. That's the place we grew up. This is the thing that we went to here.
Wow. And that's what it looked like you would put something together so personal to them.
Yeah.
Oh
wow,
yeah.
I knew everything about him. Yeah.
And after
Wow.
that, he was like, he said to my friend, he goes, "That is a good man. Your friend is a good man."
You're like, I did nothing. That's amazing.
I did nothing. It
I
just
love it.
fell in my lap, and I thought you should have it.
Those are definitely cool things to act on and to get feedback on. And it's cool. You don't know how or why, but they happen. That's awesome.
They just do. So, and that's why sometimes it pays to step out of your comfort zone a little bit. And at some point, I will tell the one friend whose mother died that I felt when it's appropriate.
Right.
You know,
when it's time. Right.
When it's time.
Well,
and you never know. You might talk, if you talk to this Ann person, whenever you reach out to this, if you decide to, it may be the time.
You also reminded me of, because we're kind of our theme on the second half of our interview has kind of turned into messages from beyond, the messages we pick up on, which is cool.
Right.
I was talking about wanting to hear from Phil when I was on the Crossing Over John Edward show for my cousin. Her dad was a minister, but he didn't believe in visitations or seeing people afterwards. He didn't like to talk about that stuff. He was very old fashioned. And this was his son that had died. And it was even listed in the autopsy report as undetermined. There was nothing, no causes that they could see. But he had a vision of his son a couple nights after he passed, where his son showed up to him and said, "Dad, I'm fine." And that was it. And what was so amazing about this was coming from a man who previously didn't believe in that kind of stuff.
Right.
Then experienced it and then talked about it. You
know?
And you could see the relief and the healing in him. The benefit to that experience was beautiful. And so that was my cousin who was saying she wanted to hear from her brother. And I didn't want to tell her for a couple of weeks that I didn't raise my hand when John Edwards said Phil, and I felt bad. And by the time I did talk to her, and I was the one that brought it up so that I could apologize, she said, "Oh, I completely forgot, because that morning that you were to be on that show, he came to me in a dream. I saw him myself." And she said, and she had never had a dream like that before. So just like we're talking about, she goes, "It's just like I've heard. I was just dreaming. And then he shows up, and it's like I woke up out of my dream." She goes, "He didn't say anything, but he smiled at me and we hugged, and I knew he was better." And she goes, "And then I completely forgot that you were going to be on that show."
Wow.
Yeah.
So like you're saying, I didn't need to feel bad.
No, there's not one single definitive way. It's not like we pick up a phone, we call someone. It's however it takes and whatever it takes.
Yeah. And, you talk about technology and the use of Facebook. My dad has also tried to get to me other ways. And one way that was kind of funny was when my mom had started dating out long after my dad had died, and she didn't want me to say anything. The same cousin that lost Phil, that she's like a sister to me. I'm an only child, so she's always been like my sister. And my mom didn't want me to tell. I was my dad's side of the family. She didn't want me to tell them she was seeing anyone or that anything was serious until, I'd gotten permission. Well, I just happened to be talking to my cousin Susan on the phone. And we hang up. My mom calls and says, "All right, Jack and I are getting married, and it's okay for you to now tell your dad's family." And I was like, "Oh, great." So I called my cousin right back, and she answers the phone laughing, saying, "Oh, this is really funny. The caller ID is showing up as Gene Lee, my dad's name, Gene space capital Lee. She spelled it out to me, and she was laughing because she said prior to that, it had my name, Misty, on there." She was just laughing. And I go, "Well, that's really funny, because I'm calling to tell you that my mom is going to get married. And she just told me it's okay to tell his family." And she goes, "Well, I guess he's okay with it too." And we just laughed.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Someone will be like, "Wasn't that kind of a coincidence?" It's not.
It's
not.
To have somebody else's name appear on the phone is a whole different.
And the other thing too is it's kind of like when you guys want to you go to call someone, even not just the people that pass. I think amongst ourselves, we all have we have this communicative thing. unfortunately don't know how to improve on it. I can't give anyone any advice on that, but it's there for however it's needed or whenever it's going to be needed. It's there. Stuff like that. The old phone call. Oh, the old phone call trick. There you are. Here it is. Sure enough. Like I said, I don't shy away from it. I don't go off and just start relishing on it. Like, look what I could,
Well, there's a time and a place, and that is on our podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Anytime anybody has a story, let us know. We're here. We want to hear everybody's story because it's all unique.
You said it earlier, Rodney. I don't know if we were recording yet, but you said it's not coincidence. It's communication.
It's communication. Yeah.
Yes.
There's, like I've said before, like I've had other friends that they'll see flowers, or again, if you guys had a butterfly, the song, the big ones are the dreams. Have you guys ever had a dream about Jesus?
No, but one time we were driving home. I remember this from Arizona after we saw my grandma, and she was a very religious person. And I wish we had cameras on our phones. If we had phones at that time, I could have taken a picture. It was the whole like Jesus in his crib with everybody around him. There was that up there, and I was like,
in the clouds?
Like
in
clouds?
the clouds.
Yeah. Okay.
The clouds were shaped like that. I was a young kid too. So I was like, am I just seeing this, or what is my whole family saw it?
Right.
And
that
it
is
was
cool.
just amazing. And we were like kind of in awe. And that had to be a meaning. I don't know what it was still to this day.
Right.
And again, that's the thing where, you may not know what it was, but maybe one of your family members knows what it means for them.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and, I was raised Christian, but I am now at the point where I believe there were a lot of messengers over time that were sent to our planet to help guide us and teach us. And growing up when I needed consoling, and like I said, I was an only child, so I also felt pretty lonely, but I do remember having just to soothe myself visions of, being held by Jesus and feeling like he was around, which I just say to anyone listening, I'm not preaching a religion that I believe we create on this earth. That's a being that had come to this planet to teach us a lesson, and to other people, there might be other, from their religion, comforting personalities that help soothe them. And I think they're all good. I think they all come from the same source.
Right. Well, I actually, as a kid, I had a dream about Jesus. And the only way to kind of describe it, it was literally the coolest guy I ever met. It was off the chain of like, man, you're cool. It was just, we were instant best friends. We were instantly laughing at stuff. He's like, you want to walk on the air? I'm like, yeah, let's go walk on air.
Let's walk on water. Let's do all that.
It was really, really just, it was great. So
it's Morgan Fairchild. He makes God cool.
Right. He does, the voice of God. Yeah.
Or I always want you back to tell the stories. It's great to hear these stories and what other people have experienced.
Tricia's wanting all these to happen to her. So she wants you to also give her some coaching on how to bring them on.
Well, it'll happen. You can't want it in a sense, but it'll eventually happen. And like I've said from the very beginning, it's going to happen in a way that only you will understand. You just give it time. You just give it time. I'm very thankful for, like I said, what has happened to me, but I'm also thankful for the both of you to allow me to openly share this stuff.
And you're wrapping it up really nicely, because it's important most of all to really remember and keep those we've loved in our hearts and keep them alive in our hearts and with their memories, and not being afraid to talk about them.
Yeah.
And it's great that we have these different groups, this kind of we have podcasts so people can know that they're not alone with what they're seeing and feeling.
And then not only that, and there'll be a time in the future where this will be, we think like, who knows will watch us? You never know. You never know.
You never know. And hopefully it'll help people. So thank you so much for coming on with us.
You're absolutely welcome.
It was wonderful. That was, it was wonderful.
Thank you for all those stories. Very
I pretty much have a story for everything.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's it for today. Thanks for listening. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at tricia.misty.tm@gmail.com.
You can also go to our website, survivingdeathanddying.com, for links to the books we talk about.
So please like, share, subscribe, and follow. Well, we did it again. We survived death and dying. Another episode.
Because we believe life and love never die.